Now, there is a proposal to relocate Tunstall School, and I'm joined in the studio now by two gentlemen who know all about this. One is both from Swale Borough Council. One is Councillor Lee Burgess, who is the chair of Tunstall Parish Council, and the other is Councillor Roger Truelove, who, of course, has been into 106.9 SFM before. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Right, and I'm being arbitrary here, as the leader of Tunstall Parish Council, perhaps, Lee, you could tell us about the proposal.
Well, quick clarification, I'm not on Swale Borough Council, but we are both Kent County Councillors for this division. The proposal to move Tunstall School has been on the cards now for quite some time, but only now has it gained traction and we've seen a planning application before us. It really is quite a contentious issue, stirring up strong feelings both for and against within the local community and further afield. We had a parish council meeting on Monday last week, which I think it's fair to say was quite well attended, which Roger also attended. Where passionate views on both sides were put forward, and the parish council came to a view that we would be opposing.
Okay, so why is it so passionate? What's the problem, Roger?
Well, there are very much two points of view. There's the point of view of the school and the parents and the local authority and the church, that the current site is unsuitable for the best education of the children. At best, the current site is good enough to take in 15 children a year, which means they're half full. It's inefficient. Consequently, the school has been taking in 30 children a year, and it's extremely overcrowded. It's very difficult to teach with a full range of facilities. It's very difficult to develop extracurricular. So the proposal is that it should be moved. The government is backing this. There is capital funding to build a school somewhere else in Tunstall which will provide children going forward for the next decades with a more appropriate education to their needs.
As I understand it, the school is currently housed in a Grade 2 listed building and supplemented by temporary accommodation. Is that correct?
It's a lovely building, and you can understand people from Tunstall having sort of a romantic view of a building that goes back a very long time, but it isn't suitable. It's crowded for the children, and we've also had an awful lot of unease between the school and the local community about issues like where did the teachers park, when they've needed extra mobiles. There's been problems there. So as far as the local authority is concerned, the feeling that you could move somewhere else in Tunstall would actually be something that would be welcomed by Tunstall, but it isn't. And I do understand when you talk about developing on a greenfield site on the edge of a town, it is bound to raise emotions, but the parents also have strong emotional feelings about the quality of education that children are going to get.
Just as a quick side issue, what would be done with the current Grade 2 listed building if you did relocate the school?
Well, I'll quickly jump in on another issue. Even though it is a Grade 2 listed buildings and the mobile classrooms are not fit for purpose, the quality and standard of education is outstanding. It is a school that is constantly oversubscribed, and the teachers do a wonderful job within the constraints they have. Can you repeat the question again? I've gone on slightly.
Well, I was going to say, what you would do with the building if you relocate?
Well, if you look at the original 3-point plan the school produced, because the site is owned partly by the Diocese of Canterbury and partly by a private landowner. And in the original documentation they said that they would buy the land off the landowner and produce a small housing enclave.
Okay, so one of the issues I gather is that people are saying that a lot of the people who would eventually use the school would not be from Tunstall. They would come from other areas of Sittingbourne.
If I could come in on that is something that people say. I've lived here for 40 years. There's always been children from outside Tunstall going to Tunstall School. It is a Church of England school, and therefore its catchment area can be much wider than just the village. And Lee was quite right, it is a very good school. It, generally speaking, always has been a very good school, and that there is an argument for making it available to many more people. And I can see a situation in South Sittingbourne where parents who would like to go to Minturn and can't, or their children to go to Minturn, have got a choice. And although people in Tunstall are objecting very strongly, I can see this adding value to South Sittingbourne, generally speaking. Value in terms of what is available for the children, but also, I dare say, it could actually affect people's property values, because this will be a very well-built school in a very good location, which people moving into the district would say, I really like my children to go to that school, and there'll be places there, because the government is saying that the funding is dependent on it having 60 children a year, not 30 as it has now.
And I believe Ofsted have said that it can't really be upgraded from a good school to excellent because of its intake.
Well, this is a very contentious point, because a lot of what the school bands around in terms of Ofsted is based on an out-of-date Ofsted report. There have been 2 more since then, which have basically wrapped up all the problems they first sought and found with the mobile accommodation. So that's one of those things that has been banned around. As far as Ofsted is concerned, no, the standard of education is excellent. The fact they don't get to move up to the next state is the fact they can't provide things like, I say, a computer suite, but there is an option of providing, say, things like computers, like a laptop trolley. Those things have not been explored, I don't think. So you don't necessarily need a whole new building to provide these extra things.
Can I come in? I don't think we have to make our decisions on the basis of an Ofsted level of qualification. I have no doubt that the school could be better if it was larger and it had modern facilities and it could have IT facilities. I just make the point again, from my point of view, representing a lot of people, giving a lot more children access to a good school seems to me to be a great advantage to Sittingbourne generally, if not to Tunstall.
Now, again, if I've got my facts correct, this is not really a new thing, is it? They were looking at expanding education provision in that kind of area as long as 5 or 10, or not as many as 10 years ago, but and what was happening was that the roles at the time were not big enough to warrant major changes to existing schools or new. Now the situation has changed.
Very much so. If you go back 10 years, the local authority was closing schools all over Kent. The number of children was much smaller than the number of places in the schools. That has completely changed, and we really have a very big problem in Sittingbourne. Westlands is having to expand. There are plans to expand Lansdowne. There's plans to expand the school in Milton. Because we haven't got enough places, therefore the argument to put to government to get the capital funding that an expansion of Tunstall will help in general, the local area, is hard to argue against. It's a different circumstance to 10 years ago.
If I can jump in there, I mean, this is one of the things that shows, I think, the complete incompetency of local authorities over things like education. 10 years ago, it's true, yes, they were closing schools. They weren't mothballing them, they were closing them and selling them off. And now we get to a point where there is a massive deficit across the county and across Swale. We're seeing schools expand left, right and centre. But this should have been foreseen a long time ago. You can't say, right, we're going to build hundreds upon hundreds of houses, not flats, but 3-bedroom family homes, and not see a shortfall in accommodation for pupils. We were the authority were offered, I think, 2 sites in 2 housing estates which were refused because there wasn't a need, and they have to buy the sites. But to me, this is a ludicrous idea, because if you're building a large housing estate, logic dictates there will be children there who need an education. And we also find out that, according to the 106 agreement for one of the estates, KC wouldn't have even had to purchase the land the school would sit on.
So we look like... Sorry, yes, Roger.
Don't argue with that. It was a judgment made by KCC a long time ago. It was a naive judgment. They were absolutely sure there wasn't going to be demographic growth, and there has been. And they were too quick to close places, and they were far too willing not to take up options for new sites. The trouble is, in those circumstances, it's very difficult to get the capital money in from outside, and it just so happens, fortunately, in some senses, that there is money. I think it's about 5 million for this site at
Just
Tunstall.
over 4 million, yeah.
Just over 4 million.
OK, so we appear to have reached a kind of impasse. Where do we go from here?
Well, what is happening is it's out for consultation as a planning application. It will either get passed, in which case it will be built, or it will not get passed, in which case somewhere else will have to be found. In the meantime, the existing school will carry on, and it's not true to say, oh, it'll collapse, but it will make the future development of the school difficult if we don't find another site. So we really have to wait until the KCC Planning Committee meets in April, they will decide, and the big issues will be about the roads, the highways, transport and so on, and the people who are opposed are perfectly right to emphasise those. So we wait for Kent planners.
If those people who... I mean, another thing I've heard, and again, it's difficult because I'm approaching this from just seeing information that I've... There was a public meeting, as I understand it, in November, and some people are saying that options that were on the table in November are no longer there. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but that's something I've heard. Can either of you comment on that?
I think it's fair to say there could be other options on the table. One thing we face is the funding for the new build is dependent on it being a two-form entry and it being a new school. So if that doesn't happen, then the funding from the government in targeted basic need funding, I think which is like 1 point something million, was just nearer 2 million, wouldn't be used for elsewhere. But I think I'm more than happy, because the problem we've had in Tunstall, and like Roger says, it has caused a lot of bad feeling in the villages. The parish council has never really been consulted while the school had these ideas. It's always, here's what we're doing, here's a planning application, yes or no. I mean, it amazes me that they can find £400,000 or just slightly over to have a loft extension, which is not value for money, but they can't find any money to replace ageing, decrepit mobiles with something better, because they say, again, it's not financially viable. But I think we're looking at the education of the children here. And, you know, the school is at a size where it is now. The village has been living with it, you know, we're getting on with things. I think there's a great appetite within the parish, and I will speak only for the parish at the moment, that, you know, the school stays where it is, stays at its current size, and we're more than happy to work with the school and the diocese to see better facilities provided.
But Lee, there has been an uneasy relationship between the school and the immediate environment around the parking for staff, but also the yellow lines that you've been putting in, which...
And they've been very successful.
Which actually affect the school, though, in terms of dropping off of supplies. You can understand the school feeling that, you know, they might be wanted somewhere else. But the reality is, Tony, that at the moment there is only one option, because there's only one planning application. And that has to be determined. It's no good anybody going to planning and saying, well, why don't you put it there? Because that's not what you do with planning.
So when does the consultation period end?
Well, that's a matter for quite some discussion. The original is 21 days from when it was posted, which takes up to the 27th of February, I think. But we've been told that they will entertain objections and things for it up until the actual planning goes to KCC, which I think is in the 9th of April.
It's expected to be, though it could be put off to May, in fact. It could be, but it is in April. And I think because it is a contentious issue, that anybody making any representation up until the time of the meeting, their representation should be taken into account. The consultation is with the parish council, with the borough council, with us as the elected members for the area, and of course the members of the public, and it would be with the elected borough councillors if they were available to give their views.
Obviously Lincolnshire's much nicer this time of year.
How can people make their views known?
Right, well, they can make them known to us, and both of us will represent their views, even if they're not our views.
Absolutely.
So that's one way to do it. They can do it to borough councillors on the planning committee, or they can write directly into Kent County Council. If they use the website and they look up the Tunstall Village School as an item, they can send their views indirectly. What I would advise them to do is not sign petitions, because a petition is one view, even if 300 people have signed it. And it helps if everybody puts in their points of view. And my advice to people in Tunstall is to concentrate on the highways issues.
Will it be debated further at future parish council meetings?
Undoubtedly, it will be, I think, ad infinitum. It will go on to parish council meetings, but the parish council made its decision for that particular planning application. It can't be revisited because that's the decision that was made, but no doubt, even if it moves down the road, it will still be in the parish. We will be discussing it, I think, way until I'm old and grey.
Can I ask, Lee, on what planning grounds did the parish council object?
Obviously, highways objections. There was the fact that it's not in the adopted local plan as a school site. Well, no, you're testing me.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, but
that
I
seems
think
to me
highways
to be what
was one of the main things.
Yes, sure.
Because we've got to remember, it is a very small, wiggly village road. It has traffic calming. There is a rat run to the A249 and the Kent Science Park. There is a working farm. It's a bus route, and also dust carts use it. So
I think this is going to run and run. What I would ask both you gentlemen to do is to just keep us informed here at 106.9 SFM, and we will obviously keep our listeners informed, and we'd like to know what the outcome is.
Of course.
Roger Truelove and Lee Burgess, thank you both for your time this afternoon.
thank you very much.
Okay.